You're listening to the Nonprofit State of Minds podcast, an Angel Oak creative production.
Hey everybody, David Chatham here with Angel Oak Creative. Welcome to the latest episode of Nonprofit State of Minds, our podcast where we pick the brains of nonprofit leaders and talk about topics that we hope that you care about. We've had some interesting conversations over the last 4 years, and today is not going to be any different. We've got Ron Pringle, CEO of Interfaith Food Shuttle, with us. Hello, Ron.
Hey, David, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Ron is a veteran of the nonprofit sector, as well as a recent author, and that's part of what we're going to be talking about today. Ron recently authored a book, When Vision Meets Reality, Authentic Leadership from the Messy Middle. So we're going to be talking about that some. So first of all, Ron, tell us a little bit about you, a little bit about your journey to the nonprofit sector.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's been a creative one that got me here. I wanted to be an Air Force pilot ever since I was 7 years old.
Oh, wow.
And, I went and took the test at 16. I signed up at 16 and I left home at 17 on a waiver to go into the Air Force and thought I was going to be a pilot, but found out I was colorblind and those dreams were instantly crushed. And so I ended up serving as a chaplain's assistant during Desert Storm in the early 90s. And coming home after that was a very challenging time for me, and trying to find my path and trying to find my way, and stumbled across an opportunity at the Low Country Food Bank in Charleston and met the CEO there, Archie McCree, who gave me an opportunity to serve in this space. And, I've been working over 25 years here, trying to pay him back for that responsibility that he gave to me.
Wow. Well, every journey is unique, it seems like, in this sector. So yours is no exception there.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about Interfaith Food Shuttle. Let people know what your organization is about and what you do.
Yeah, here at Interfaith Food Shuttle for over 35 years, this organization has been recovering food that would have otherwise been tossed away, and making sure that food is good for human consumption, and then redistributing that to local partners and community partners, group homes, shelters, workforce development programs, to ensure that that food was able to be utilized versus ending up in the landfill. And that was the work of the founding members of the food shuttle, is recovering that food and getting it to places where it's needed most. Over the years, it has evolved as it began to learn the different challenges that people who needed this food was facing, and ended up growing into more of an educational and empowerment type program, where they moved into the space of teaching people how to prepare meals for themselves, teaching people how to utilize fresh produce and how to grow their own fresh produce and have access to food on their own. And then childhood feeding became a very core space for them because they wanted to ensure that we eliminated hunger at every stage of a child's development. So over the years, the program has developed from simply backpacks a child receives on a Friday before they go home, to school pantries, where they're meeting the entire family need, not just at the elementary school, but at the middle, high school, and collegiate levels.
Wow.
And so that has been Interfaith Food Shuttle's model, with its core pillars being feed, teach, and grow.
Yeah. And you also have a farm, is that right?
Yes, we operate a 16-acre farm where we are training individuals. We have over 2,500 volunteers.
Wow.
And students that come through, and they're not just volunteering, but they're learning how to harvest produce, how to plant produce. And they're also, while they're learning, they're participating in these programs, that they are planting the produce, tending to the produce, harvesting the produce, and then distributing the produce and delivering that produce directly to seniors. So
Wow.
it's a full circle engagement that's teaching them in all aspects of what this empowerment journey really means.
Oh, that's great. And Angel,
Yeah.
just for transparency's sake, Angel Oak Creative works with you all. You're one of our clients, and we're very grateful for that. And also, we've done some volunteer work at the farm, so we've enjoyed that as well, and appreciate that opportunity to participate in your mission. So, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank you.
well, let's talk a little bit about your book. What inspired you? The name of the book again is "When Vision Meets Reality: Authentic Leadership from the Messy Middle." Talk about that a little bit. What inspired you to write this? What motivated you, and what's it about?
Yeah. My inspiration behind the book, I think, has just been more so of my own personal journey,
Mm,
and understanding more and more about my own lived experience and my own personal challenges that I have experienced and grown through over my time as leadership. So it really began with a lot of self-reflection of my personal journey and some of the most painful moments in my life that I've had that either has held me back or that I've used as fuel,
mm,
to be able to set my mind in a place to whereas it was all about the accomplishments. It was all about the numbers and the end results. Um, as I wrestled with the own messiness, that I carried and brought into leadership, because in leadership, you can have a very clear vision of where you believe the organization can become.
yeah.
You can see the strong culture, you can see the greater impact and making the organization healthier and all of the different ways to approaching that mission. But then you look at the reality right in front of you and where you are presently compared to where you're wanting to go with that, and all of these things are true at the same time,
Yeah.
you know, and this is that messy middle
Yeah.
that you have to wrestle through as to how do we get there, and how do we build that culture? How do we get to have that impact that we believe we can have, and so coming into this during the pandemic here and at the food shuttle starting in May of 2020, there were so many things happening in the moment with us trying to understand how to address an issue that's never been seen to this scale in our modern time,
Yeah.
and having to pivot from what we used to do every day to meeting the immediate demand and the need that was there, then even though that was the reality, it still did not change the future, the impact, the vision, the end result, the strategic direction that the organization should go in, but you had to learn how to navigate that messy middle
Yeah.
so that you don't lose sight of where you are going, but you have to meet the immediate need that makes up your reality today.
Yeah. Talk about that messy middle a little bit. What does that look like for a nonprofit CEO, a nonprofit executive, director, or leader? How do they know they're in the messy middle?
Yeah, you can recognize the messy middle because growth doesn't always look polished,
Mm,
while it's happening.
yeah.
Sometimes it look like difficult conversations, changing course, letting go of practices that no longer fit, letting go of programs that are no longer affected. And the responsibility of leadership is to remain grounded enough to the vision and the reality in the conversation, so that they don't lose sight of each other.
Mm,
And so, as what I mentioned, being having a thought and a vision of where this organization can be, what we can accomplish if we were to take certain steps. But at the same time, you can't lose sight of the reality and the truth that's needed today.
yeah.
So even though you have to pivot in the moment, you have to have an idea of where you're going, because at some point you have to redirect back to your core mission and your core vision, and your core purpose. If not, you end up changing into something that you weren't designed to do,
Hmm.
and an organization that is no longer recognizable by the community that founded it.
Wow.
So
What
that's navigating through that messy middle.
what does it take? Who does it take, I guess, to help a leader like you to stay focused? Because most executive directors feel alone. I think is one of the symptoms to me of being in that messy middle, right? But also, what how do you surround yourself, or how do you bring people into your universe that are helping you to overcome those challenges? Is that important, I guess, first of all?
Yeah, I would say it's very important because it's very easy to lose yourself in
Mm,
moments like that because of what you feel you are sacrificing, and that you had to sacrifice, But I've
yeah.
also learned that there's a difference between sacrificing for the mission and sacrificing yourself to the mission.
Mm,
So those are two
yeah.
different things. You know, there are going to be times that you're going to work late. There's going to be times that you have crises that you have to deal with in the immediate. Um, but the problem begins when sacrifice stops being a season and
Mm,
it becomes your identity.
mm,
And I think that is where I realized that I needed additional support and people around me. Um, because when I came out of the military, I mentioned, I was struggling in a very challenging situation, and, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, as you can imagine, after serving during a time like that.
yeah.
Um, and the young man, Archie McCree, that gave me an opportunity, he didn't see a CEO at the time. He saw somebody that needed an opportunity,
Yeah.
and that's what he gave. And so I surrounded myself with people who recognized what I needed in the moment,
Mm,
who could see the challenge that was on my face, who can see that I was sacrificing myself for the mission instead of to the mission. And so asking me the tough questions, that are my values aligned? You often hear people, tell you, make sure you take care of yourself. And as a leader, it's
mm,
very lonely and you have to take care of yourself, but I found myself having to lean on those who recognize what that felt like,
mm,
who was able to relate, to the conversations about feeling alone.
yeah.
Um, and where I could share openly and be completely honest, not only with myself, but the person whom I'm speaking to and have that relationship with, um, that you can say to, I'm frustrated.
Mm,
You can say, I'm scared.
mm.
You can say, I really don't know what I'm going to do. You know, um, and then
That takes
journeying.
that's a risk, right? I mean, for someone in a leadership position, that they're vulnerable, right? That how do how do you help others to understand that there's strength in that vulnerability? What does that look like?
Well, what I recognized in those conversations was I wasn't the only one.
Mm.
I wasn't the first person this feelings happened to. I'm
Right.
not going to be the last person that have these feelings.
Yeah.
I am not going to be. I wasn't the first one to walk into a leadership role with personal trauma or personal challenges.
Mm.
You know, um, and I'm not going to be the last one.
Yeah.
you know? And so being able to talk to someone who is willing to share that with you about their journey and how they were able to walk through that to become a better leader made the vulnerability shared.
Hmm.
So it became a shared space
Yeah.
uh, where I felt more comfortable being my authentic self. I didn't have to be the image of leadership that I thought was expected,
Hmm.
but I could be the authentic leader and be honest with myself. Because I found if I was honest with myself, it was easier for me to be honest with the team,
Hmm.
to be honest with the people we were serving, to be honest with our donors,
Hmm.
because the perception that we give other people aren't necessarily um, correct,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it paints an image in our surrounding that we have of ourselves,
Yeah.
versus looking at them authentically and understanding that the donors that donate that dollar, could very well be the same single mom who was trying to say thank you
Yeah.
because a food pantry was available to her. The donor that gave $20,000, was a child that their parents, went to a food bank and they recognized that they're in a different position now to
Yeah.
ensure that no other child feel what they felt when they were younger.
Yeah.
And it's only off being authentic that you're able to hear those stories, that you're able to connect with people,
Yeah.
that you're able to recognize that we are all human and we're here to serve.
Yeah. Now, how do people respond to that? What does that look like? On the other side, how does your board respond to that? How does your staff respond to that? How do your donors respond to that?
The response I've received has been very encouraging.
Hmm.
Um, you hear things like, I appreciate your honesty.
Hmm.
I appreciate your vulnerability.
Yeah.
And most of the time it goes on to say, you remind me of a situation I was in.
Hmm.
And this is why I volunteer. You know,
Yeah.
I met a family and that family touched me in a way that this is why I contribute. So when you are able to be your authentic self, you connect with donors, you connect with the community, you connect with the people that you serve more authentically. And it's helped to shape my leadership, and the space and the environment I try to create here at the Food Shuttle.
Hmm.
I meet with every single staff member that comes on board. And my commitment to each and every one of them is that they would have an environment where they can be the very best version of themselves. Because I am not afraid to say, I don't know at the moment what to do.
Hmm.
However, here is the process we're going to go through to find the answer.
Yeah.
And that could very well be, I'm going to listen to you. What do you feel the right next step is?
So
And what I've
you
found,
mean CEOs don't have all the answers? Is that what you're saying?
no, they don't. And, and I'm not afraid to tell them that they don't.
I think
What I
I think
found
people
when
expect
I
that,
approach
right?
it that way, I found that I've encouraged the individual on the team who's closest to the problem, the individual that may have felt shy
Yeah.
and didn't feel like their opinion mattered. But it creates the space for them to be themselves and speak on what they feel they know.
Hmm.
And what I found was often that's where the solution lies. That's where the next steps are.
Yeah.
And that strategy we adopted into our approach when it comes to serving the community. Just because we're serving that community does not mean that they're not valuable resources
Mm.
in that community.
I think that, and I think that's something that has gotten more attention in recent, recent experience. But I think also it's still an area where um, we don't here in the nonprofit sector, we don't turn to those who are experiencing the challenges to help solve the problem. Is that fair?
That's very, very fair. And I can understand how it can be tough for
Yeah.
organizations to make that transition because it's not an overnight direction you
Yeah.
can take your organization in. You know, it's a slow turn,
Yeah.
but it has to be an intentional shift
Yeah. What are some things you
because
help foster that?
one of the things that I did was took my staff through a change leadership series.
Mm.
And it's a series I developed that helped an individual to look at themselves, to understand their own challenges, some of the things that they bring to work, to understand those things, to understand where their own barriers are, and then provide support and resources to help them remove those barriers. And as they do, they are practicing change leadership. They are practicing the process that I'm asking them to do within this organization. So it becomes easier for them to accept the change and the shift the organization is making because they understand what it means to deal with hard decisions and tough decisions when it comes to change because they just work through that within themselves.
Mm.
So
Well,
that
it's
was a part
empowering too,
of the dialogue with the team internally first. And then it became a part of the conversation with our donors
right? Mm.
and us showing up authentically, with us carrying the reality and the truth of what our community was asking for. So while the donor may say, here is what we would like for you to do in this community,
Yeah.
we weren't afraid to say, that's a great idea, but let me make sure you understand what the community is asking for. So in order for us to be more impactful, in order for us to ensure your investment have the greatest impact, we need to address what the community is telling us that they need. And that shift with our donors, as they were beginning to see the results, as they were beginning to see the bigger impact, built that trust.
Mm.
And word of mouth, is the greatest
Yeah.
advertisement,
Yeah.
and community people begin to talk. And they tell you that this is why I partner with Interfaith Food Shuttle,
Mm.
because they listened, because they made an impact. And you hear this more in past tense. This is why I partnered with Interfaith Food Shuttle, because we empower them and put them on a pathway of self-sustainability. So that's the type of investment that we look for, one that is going to have a return, not just in the immediate, yes, you got a meal today, but in the long term. My child is graduating from high school. My child is going off to college. 10 years ago, I never thought this was going to be a possibility for us. That's the investment that we make when we remove hunger as a barrier at every stage of a child's development.
Mm.
That's the results of authentic leadership.
That's powerful. That's powerful. What for those leaders out there who are um, experiencing their own challenges, whether it be fundraising or whether it be staff or whether it be increased demand for their services, which we're seeing across a lot of sectors. Um, what's one or two key pieces from the book that you want to make sure people kind of hear in terms of helping them to deal with that messy middle?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would say is um, don't confuse uncertainty with failure.
Hmm. Okay.
If you're leading anything worth changing, there are going to be periods where the old way is no longer the sufficient way of doing it, you know, and you have to make a decision. And that's the messy middle, and your responsibility isn't always to escape it as quickly as possible. Sometimes you have to lead your people through that faithfully because it may be founding moments and founding things that that organization is just married to. But as the need evolves, the organization has to evolve, which means you have to keep listening. You have to keep learning. You have to keep making the best decisions with the information that you have, and understand that that is leadership.
Yeah.
The last thing I would say is,
Let me hold on one second, Ron. Let me ask a little follow up to that.
mm-hmm,
The one of the challenges I see for a lot of folks who are wanting to evolve their organization, there isn't patience for it. There isn't patience for being in that messy middle for a little while, right? Because people want the immediate result, right? They want that immediate
yes,
either, or the board might it might be your staff who's kind of tired of dealing with the struggles that come with the change. How do you as a leader help them to persevere through those that messy time where you're in the middle of change, right? You're in the middle of the process. You're not on the other side of it.
I remind them one simple thing is that our pace through this moves at the speed of trust.
Hmm.
This is just not our, this is just not my board's decision and shift.
Yeah.
This is not just the staff's decision and shift. This is the community's decision and shift
Wow.
because we did not accomplish this by ourselves.
Yeah.
So when this level and type of shift needs to happen, then we have to be patient to ensure that we are bringing the right people along. Because if not, we find ourselves by ourselves.
Hmm.
So
Because
if you
we
want to
get
move
stuck.
fast, go alone.
Yeah.
If you want to move right, go together.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you have to remind your team this is that the same voice that they have, the community member has, the donors have, the volunteer has, and we have a responsibility to hear them,
Hmm.
regardless of what that message to us is. We have a responsibility to listen.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think that what I've seen working with our clients, the ones who do persevere through these changes and these challenges, they come out stronger on the other side, right? They come
Yes.
out more effective. They come out more impactful than they entered into that process. And not only do they uh, improve their outcomes, but they also improve, to your point, trust in the community, trust in their donors. So there's a lot of rewards at the end of that journey, right? It's can we sustain ourselves long enough to get there to that reward? Is that fair?
That is 100% fair. Yes, indeed.
Uh, what's another? I cut you off before, and I'm
No, no
sorry, but
worries.
what's another? What's something else from the book? What's another tip? Another recommendation
Um,
that you make that might be important for these leaders?
don't become indispensable.
Hmm.
And I know that sounds
Oh,
strange because leaders are often taught to demonstrate our value, and we want to ensure that our board see us and see our value and what we bring to the organization. But I don't believe the ultimate measure of leadership is whether everything falls apart after I leave.
wow.
I think great leadership creates people, organizations, and communities that are stronger simply because of my role and my part while I was here.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what I want my legacy to be.
Wow.
Um, as just to remember that the mission is important, the organization is important, the people we serve are important. Um, after just over 25 years, I couldn't believe that ending hunger is simply not the absence of people receiving food. It's the presence of healthy communities, relationships, capacity, and resilience and
Hmm.
ownership.
Yeah.
Communities in a position to take care of themselves. So it's not about what I accomplish while I'm in the chair. It's about the people I've built. The eagles is what I call them here that leave the
Yeah.
nest, and they came, they learned, they contributed to this mission, and they fly off to
Yeah.
continue growing their careers. And then they put
Yeah.
themselves in a position where they're giving back. So if I could
Yeah.
leave, nonprofit leaders with a thought, I would say lead the mission, build the organization, and develop the people.
Hmm. That's
That
powerful.
is the legacy.
That's great. That's a great place to leave our audience here. If you would, Ron, tell people how they can learn more about you, about Interfaith Food Shuttle, and about your book.
Yeah, absolutely. For those that want to learn more about me or find my book, you can find that at lronpringle.com. To learn more about this amazing mission that we have here at the Food Shuttle, please visit us at foodshuttle.org. And you'll find various ways that you can get engaged by either volunteering, contributing, and donating, or learning. We have an educational component on there, Hunger 101. So if you're
Hmm.
a college student, you're a high school student, and hunger is a topic of yours, we have information where you can go and research those topics to learn more about what the needs are right here in North Carolina. And so the one thing that I tell people that they could really help me with is getting the word out,
Hmm.
letting people know that hunger is a real issue.
Yeah.
However, we have a solution here at Interfaith Food Shuttle.
Yeah.
So we listen, we identify, we empower, we act, and we sustain. That is our approach.
That-
So go there and learn how you can be a part of that.
Well, thank you. And your book is available on Amazon, if I remember correctly.
Yes, it is available on Amazon.
So, as is everything else in the world, right? But,
Yes.
well, Ron, thank you so much for all you do. Thank you for
Yes, David.
sharing your wisdom with us today. We look forward to continuing to follow you Thank you again for your partnership with Angel Oak Creative. We're very grateful for that. Thank you to our audience for listening today. If you found us, you know where our podcast is. We hope that you'll listen to some of our previous episodes and continue to stay in touch. You can learn more about us at angeloakcreative.com, and we're all over LinkedIn and all of those things. So thank you so much, Ron. Thank you, brother. We look forward to staying in touch, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much, David. Take care.